South Africa's Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, has just rejected an application made by a proposed political party called Islamic State of Africa, ISA, to contest for the 2026 local government elections in South Africa. This proposed political group or party is led by a Durban businessman called Fahad Huma, who we are going to get into shortly, ladies and gentlemen. But the truth of the matter is, this was expected to happen, and the leadership of the IEC did just that, ladies and gentlemen. And I know a lot of the people that followed me, my subscribers on YouTube, may not agree with me on this, but I'm not a hypocrite on any level, and I'm not going to hide my feelings about it. And so, as usual, I'm going to be objective in my analysis, even though I am a born-again Christian. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the fact. Let's go straight to it. South Africa is a secular state with 85% of the population identifying as Christians. The rest of the population is a mixture of traditional religion, Hindu, undetermined people, and then Islam. Islam actually represents below 2% of the overall population of South Africa. So it was obvious this movement wasn't going to fly. Now, I have so much to share with you on this, but before we get into it, please take a second to click on the subscription button so you can have updates on all my subsequent videos. And thank you for that. My name is Cyrus, and this is Tuntum Network in Accra, Ghana. Let's dive into this. So the proposed Islamic State of Africa was filed and was rejected, and their leader promised an appeal. The core reasons why the IEC rejected this application were on three issues. The first was on insufficient voter support, which means he failed to submit signatures from at least 300 registered voters in South Africa, along with their full details. The second was they didn't provide adequate public notice before filing their documents. Their publication in the newspaper was limited and couldn't reach many parts of South Africa. And the third is there are a series of objections raised by citizens of South Africa against their filing, indicating that South Africa's constitution has no place for Sharia law that's offered by an Islamic state. In fact, the objections are over 200 of them, from lawyers to civil servants to groups and regular South Africans. And according to the laws of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, ladies and gentlemen, the Islamic State party, or any party for that matter, whose application is rejected, has 30 days to appeal. And in the case of the Islamic State party, the counting starts from July 12th, 2025 to August 10th, 2025. The question, however, ladies and gentlemen, is why Islamic State political party when you live as a minority religion in a Christian majority country? Why Islamic State party when you live in a secular country that has a secular constitution? What is the agenda when you say an Islamic State party, ladies and gentlemen? We understand what it means, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll share a little bit of that with you. It means a political party that will uphold the laws of the Quran of the religion of Islam above the constitution of that country. There is no other definition around it, because this is not the first time we are hearing this. We know the history of how, for instance, a country like Iran, it was from the mid-1920s to the late 1970s when it was a secular state, and how it has become since it became an Islamic state. We know what it means to have an Islamic State movement in West Africa and their activities, ladies and gentlemen. We know where their allegiance lies, ladies and gentlemen. Let nobody be naive about this. We are totally aware of how they start and what they become. The country South Africa is one of the few countries in Africa where you hardly find Islamic mosques scattered around the place. Their contact with the Islamic faith is very minimal. For many years, they used to have an Indian-born South African called Ahmed Hussein Didat, who was an apologist for Islam. And for those of you who don't know who an apologist is, let me educate you quickly. It simply means a person who offers an argument in defense for something, and in this case, for Islam. He was a well-known apologist who traveled the length and breadth of Africa and the world to spread the religion of Islam through apologetics, but couldn't achieve much in South Africa. He died in KwaZulu-Natal in August of 2005. South Africa has 9 provinces, ladies and gentlemen. Out of the 9, Western Cape has the largest population of people who identify as Muslims. Their number is approximately 386,000 people. KwaZulu-Natal is next with about 236,000 Muslims. And Gauteng province, which has the capital Joburg, it has a total population of 242,000 Muslims. The shocking thing, which many don't know, is this, ladies and gentlemen. Most of the Muslims who form these populations, according to South Africa's most recent census in 2022, were not born in South Africa. Most of them were immigrants or children of immigrants. Therefore, South Africa isn't your typical multi-religious country like many other African countries. Even though the South African Department of Basic Education lists Arabic as one of the approved non-official languages that can be offered in schools, ladies and gentlemen, it is mainly offered in schools with Muslim learners, especially independent Islamic schools or in some public schools located in areas with large Muslim populations. It isn't a nationwide thing in South Africa. In fact, South Africa acknowledges 11 languages that can be spoken in any government or public institution, including inside their National Assembly, but Arabic isn't one of them. Let me give you a few other facts, ladies and gentlemen. At the time of South Africa's democratic independence in 1994, the Muslim population was estimated to be around 1.3% to 1.5% of the national population. Until today, the percentage is identical, meaning there hasn't been any significant public acceptance of the religion in the last 31 years. The most additions have come from immigrants who naturalized as South Africans. In fact, the 1996 Constitution of South Africa establishes a secular state, which means the government is neutral towards religion. Therefore, any attempt like what Fahad Huma tried to do with an Islamic State party will be shut down. The irony, however, is this. There are political parties registered in South Africa which bears religious names. Like, for instance, ladies and gentlemen, African Christian Democratic Party, founded in 1993, which at some point had seats in the National Assembly, and the Christian Political Movement in 2018. However, ladies and gentlemen, one must always know that South Africa is predominantly Christian population and therefore fundamentally subscribe to the Judeo-Christian worldview. Even though it may appear unjust to many people, this is the reality, not just in South Africa, but in every country in the world. For instance, there isn't any political party called the Christian Party of Egypt or Iran or any of the Muslim countries, even though there are Christians in those countries. It will not be allowed under any circumstance in those countries. The fact that Farhad Huma can even submit a filing for such a political party in itself is a testament of how liberal South Africa's politics is, ladies and gentlemen. Now, who is Farhad Huma in the first place? Because until recently, I never heard of his name in South Africa's politics. On the U.S. Home Treasury website, Farhad Huma is described as a cell leader of ISIS. He was accused of leading a local ISIS cell across Africa by way of providing technical, financial, material support, including recruiting members and facilitating fund transfer. Ladies and gentlemen, don't take my words for it. Check him out on the internet yourself. Unless, of course, it's not the same person that we are referring to. In that case, I'll retract my words. But ladies and gentlemen, the issue with introducing an Islamic State politics into South Africa is simply an issue of introducing another law, in this case, a Sharia law, that will be superior to South Africa's constitution or law. If you care to know what Sharia law means, Just Google it yourself and look at all the countries that practice it and what the people of those countries say about it, and ask yourself all the important questions. Let no one be misled, ladies and gentlemen. South Africa has come a long way since 1994, and there should be no room for anyone or anything to undermine their constitution. We, the black people of Africa, must just look around us, especially in West Africa, and advise ourselves at all times, ladies and gentlemen. Do not be carried away by money or some fake promises. Let's stay vigilant at all times, for when it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and moves like a duck, it is definitely a duck. My main problem with South Africa has to do with the ANC party, the African National Congress. They have been the cause of many of South Africa's internal woes, ladies and gentlemen. They have so far been terrible with the management of South Africa, from the national level to the world level. The great South Africa we knew when we were growing up has become a shell of itself. It is stagnated on every level and allowed for all manner of problems to come up. South Africa, what's happening? This has to change. The ANC has lost touch with the people, to be honest with you. Change must happen soon before it's too late. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this video, and hope you subscribe. If you haven't done this and this is your first time, I encourage you to do this. I'll come your way again with another one very soon. Until then, God bless us all. It is bye-bye from now.